Hey guys, Commander Casual here. Looking at our deck tech for our Vial Smasher the Fierce and Sidar Kondo of Jamuraa, Munchkins deck, as I like to call it. So the deck's mostly built around Sidar, and then we have Vial Smasher for the extra two colors, which gives us like a lot of our really fun cards to play, and just it helps dole out some extra damage. So it is a fairly aggressive deck, but it actually carries pretty well into the late game. Just after we kind of set up a bunch of stuff. So the whole point is that just about every creature in the deck has power 2 or less, and the idea is that we play out a bunch of dorks and a bunch of like smaller creatures and stuff like that, and then we eventually just attack in for damage over time. We've got a bunch of ways to kind of exploit power 2 or less, lots of token generation and a bit of a token sub theme going, and then just a lot of ways to just absolutely overwhelm our opponents with a bunch of little guys. And that's kind of how the deck runs. It's super fun. I've played a bunch of games with it the past couple days, and it does really well. Even if you don't quite win, it's still like it's super fun. You get to do a lot with this deck and play a lot, so it's absolutely a ton of fun. I have so much fun with it. So yeah, so Jamuraa 2/5 with flanking. Creatures your opponents control without flying or reach can't block creatures of power 2 or less. So if the creature has flying or reach, it can block creatures of power 2 or less in our deck. But to counteract that, we have Bower Passage. So creatures with flying can't block creatures you control. So with Bower Passage out and Sidar Kondo, only creatures with reach can block creatures with power 2 or less, which is pretty niche. There's not a whole lot of reach cards in general, and then you don't see a whole lot of them in Commander as well. And then yeah, Vial Smashers, whenever you cast your first spell each turn, he deals damage equal to that spell's converted mana cost to an opponent chosen at random. So the damage is thrown around at random, but it is just some extra damage, and we're not winning with commander damage here, so any damage is good damage. As I said, for sub-themes in this deck, we've got like token generation, we've got a little bit of life gain, and then otherwise it's just kind of overwhelming people with numbers. We've got a bunch of X spells here at the top of the curve to really benefit off of Vial Smasher. These are like, can be huge late game kind of damage cards, just because whatever you pay into the X, it's the X plus whatever the rest of their converted mana cost is damage for Vial Smasher, which can be huge late game, because you could be throwing like 10 to 15 damage at somebody's face, even if it is at random, which later stages of the game when you're all kind of deadlocked, nobody has a lot of health, but everybody has a lot of permanence, then it can really win you a game. So we've got Grenzo, the Dungeon Warden. So for this card, we usually actually don't even pay the X on it at all, because it is a 2/2 just on its own. The main reason we have it in here is because we just have a ton of creatures with low power. So you just play Grenzo as a 2/2 for 2, and then you can pay 2 and hopefully get cards back from your graveyard, like Ankle Shanker and like Oracle of Moldiah, Reclamation Sage, Acidic Slime, all that kind of stuff. We've also got a Court of Calling just to go get a specific creature. This is also great just because we usually have a ton of creatures out on the battlefield, so the Convoke cost makes it a lot easier to cheat out early, and also get it up to a really high cost, so we do lots of damage with Vial Smasher. We've got Release the Gremlins, which just is so wonderful in this deck, because it can be a high cost X spell, so we can do a lot of damage with Vial Smasher with it. We get to remove artifacts, which are super common in Commanders. It's always tons of artifacts to destroy. And then we also get 2/2s that go along with our deck theme. So this card is just makes me so happy to run in this deck for so many reasons. We've also got a Martial Coup. So create X 1/1 white soldier tokens. X is 5 or more, destroy all other creatures. This is great if you just have like a Vial Smasher out, because you Martial Coup, you deal a bunch of damage off Vial Smasher's trigger, you get a bunch of dudes, you wipe the board, you keep the dudes, then you play Sidar Kondo next turn, and then you get in with all the dudes. So it's really, really good. We've got Dusk and Dawn. So destroy all creatures power 3 or greater, and then return all creatures power 2 or less from your grave to your hand. I don't even think I need to really explain why that's just a ton of value in this deck. Revelark to bring back our little dudes. Edrixar, some more token stuff. Siphon Flesh for some removal and also token production. Throat Slitter's super fun in this deck because you can ninja it into play and then get some extra removal going. Grey Merchant. There's not a ridiculous amount of Devotion to Black in here, but it's still just such a good card and gains you so much life while also dealing damage that it's still worth it. Berserker's Onslaught. I was really proud of myself for thinking of this card because I was trying to think of a way to like basically pump my dorks, but you can't really pump them without losing the benefit of Sidar Kondo's ability. So I was just like, oh, well, I can just give them all double strike. They'll do double damage, but their power doesn't actually increase. So Berserker's Onslaught does a lot of work in this deck and can actually like really easily win you a game. Acidic Slime, Reclamation Sage, Eternal Witness, Farhaven Elf. There's a whole bunch of enter the battlefield kind of creatures. Probably enough to actually like warrant Panharmonicon in this deck, but I already had such a hard time cutting it down to what it is. But those are just, you know, value cards that have like a two power body or a 1 power body. So we play those for value and stuff. Along with more tokens and landfall stuff, we got Zendikar's Royal. Sapling of Kolfanor, which kind of acts like a Dark Confidant in this deck, but is a 2/5 indestructible. There's very few cards that have higher power than they do toughness in this deck. I think like one of the only ones is Eternal Witness, and that's like you get an Eternal Witness when you attack in your hand and you lose 1 life, which we're pretty okay with doing. Ankle Shanker just acts as a good replacement for Sidar Kondo. If he's gotten destroyed a bunch of times, you don't want to pay the commander tax. He just lets you get in with a bunch of dudes as well, or if your opponent wants to chump block, it's almost always just a better exchange for you. For our token sub-theme, we've got an Anointed Procession and a Parallel Lives. Those are pretty much the only token support cards we have that help pump out stuff, or that synergize with token production, I should say. We do have tons of stuff that does bump out tokens, like Spawn Wraith, Artifact Mutation, we've got Aura Mutation, Spawning Pit. The other stuff that goes with the mass token production is Perforos and Impact Tremors. Excuse me. They just help do a bunch of extra damage. We've got like Rabble Master, Handwire Garrison, just to get tons and tons of dudes out and just beat in for... you actually like beat-ins for pretty decent damage, despite the fact that all the creatures are power 2 or less. When I built this deck, I was like, oh, this will be really fun, but I'm worried it won't actually do that much damage. And you'd really be surprised with a combo of Vial Smasher's triggered ability and just having tons of dudes. You get a remarkable amount of damage done. We've got a Windborn Muse just for some extra protection. Avalanche Riders is another one of those kind of utility ETB effects. For removal, we're running like an Anguished Unmaking, Crackling Doom, and Utter End, and then those kind of board wipey cards in the Release the Gremlins. Not a ton of removal. It's not a huge issue. We've also got the mutations for the removal as well, and then Throat Slitter as well, and Siphon Flesh. So I guess there's actually a decent amount of removal in here, but it's not usually the issue. The kind of the patron saint of this deck is Meekstone. So creatures power 3 or greater don't untap during their controller's untap step. It seems like the vast majority of commanders have, regardless of what their strategy is, have power 3 or greater. So this card's absolutely ridiculous. I was playing it like I shut down a Yidris deck with it. Shuts down just about any big beater that doesn't have vigilance, and it's only 1 mana to play, so it's absolutely worth it. We've got a Vampiric Rites, just to sack creatures and draw cards if we need to, profit off of board wipes and stuff like that. Soul Warden actually gains us a ridiculous amount of life. Oh yeah, we've got a bit of a life gain sub theme in here as well. So Soul Warden, Cabal is huge in Commander, just gains us tons of life off of all those triggers. Whip of Erebos, Grey Merchant, yeah, and just a bunch of kind of little life gainy things in there. But the little bits of life gain just make us being on the offensive a little bit more profitable, because we have more life to fall back on if we do take some damage on the crackback. We are running a couple of the new Ixalan, or new at the time this video is coming out, relatively new, flip cards that flip into the lands. So we've got Legion's Landing, which flips into Adanto. We've got the Growing Rites of Ytlamok, which flips into Cradle of the Sun, which is essentially Gaia's Cradle. And then Conqueror's Galleon, because it has power 2, which is just a really good utility land that functions kind of like I think it's Staff of either Dominion or Domination. Anyway, there's a lot more about this deck that I could go into specifics. I could go through every card, but I don't think I really need to. It's super fun. Check out the deck tech. I'll be posting it in the link of this video. Throne of the God Pharaoh is super fun in this deck. I have to mention it. It just helps you get in a ton of extra damage after attacking. Anyway, check out the deck. It's super fun. The best thing about this deck is that if you wanted to do a similar deck, you could easily just take these 2 commanders and then throw in whatever little dorks and sub-themes you want to run, because it's so variable. And like, it's, as I said, like I had easily had like I think about 150 cards that I had to cut down into this deck here, and these are mostly just cards that I really wanted to run, like Captain Lannery Storm and like Goblin Rabble Master and stuff. These are just cards that I thought were really cool and really fun, and that's what I ended up deciding on. But you can totally customize this deck, still get the similar effect, but to however you want to play. Anyway, it's been the Commander Casual, guys.